policy, but that's certainly one of them.
Here's a question from our audience. We talk about hyper-partisanship today. This person says, is partisanship stronger today? And if so, why? Senator Jeanne, I would add on to that. And is that a problem? I mean, the parties help us define who we are and what we believe.
Well, as I said, I don't think the partisanship is a problem if that's the perspective people always have. So I think you have to run elections, but the problem is when you get by elections, if partisanship governs everything that you're working on. And one of the places where I'm not sure that Judd and I agree is on the rules of the Senate. As a newbie, I'm less committed to some of those rules, but I think we've got to look at the rules of the Senate and see how they have contributed to obstructionism in the Senate and to some of that partisanship. I think it's important for us to protect minority rights, but I think allowing one person to filibuster and hold up indefinitely legislation that comes before the Senate is not a system that makes sense. I think the fact that we can, without saying who we are, hold somebody who's been nominated by the president indefinitely, not because we have a concern about that person, but because we have another issue that we're trying to get somebody's attention to. I think that doesn't make sense. Right now we have over 80 of the president's nominees on hold, and at this point in the Bush administration there were 8 on hold. So I think that kind of rules contributes to partisanship in some respects.
What do you think, Senator Gregg?
Oh, I think the Senate's an incredibly unique body that has evolved over time, and its constitutional purpose, as defined by Washington, was to be the saucer into which the hot coffee is poured. We are a government. Our constitutional government was structured to be incremental. We're not a parliamentary government. A parliamentary government moves very quickly left or right depending on which party wins the majority, because there are no limitations. There's no checks and balances. Our government was built by Madison with massive checks and balances. And the biggest check and balance in our governmental system is the Senate. And I'm a great protector and defender of the prerogative of the Senate to act as a supermajority. That's what it's supposed to do. On contentious issues that are significant to the country, there should be something more than a 51-vote event, unless by the terms of the Constitution it's 51 votes, such as, in my opinion, Supreme Court justice can't be filibustered. But the issue is, if you're talking about civility, bipartisanship, compromise, and reaching a consensus, if you require 60 votes, by definition you're going to have to do that, because rarely does one party have 60 votes. I mean, the Democratic Party had 60 votes briefly here, but so I think it's a system that has worked very well for our nation. It keeps the way I described it is all American politics is played between the 40-yard lines. If you go to England, politics you might be down the 20-yard line, on the left or the right, depending on who the party is. I think it's best to have politics between the 40-yard lines and not have an overreach, because we are not a nation that has an ideological base that's either left or right. I think we're a center-right nation, but we're center, basically. And you want to be able to maintain a government system that doesn't overreach and therefore affront the electorate and the people who sent you there. And that can happen quickly if you went to a system where you took out the pressure point in the Senate, which is that 60-vote event.